So he's going to be answering the questions, and the questions is going to be moving all over the place. So don't think it's him going all over the place, because
I
I've
do
seen
that
that
sometimes
before.
too. I do that
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, it's
Sometimes
all
you might
good.
ask me a question, it might require me to draw information from several
Yes,
different
yes,
places. But yeah,
yeah. It's going to get deep in here. So, talk to the people. Let them know what you've been up to, man. How can they come and see you? What's up, man?
man, I haven't been doing much. I had a funeral I just went to over the weekend. One of my cousins had passed away, and so I've been really laid back, and that take the family off. Always, have to stutter stuff because we've been having like for the last 15 years since I've been home, we've been having family members dropping like flies. You know, so that takes its toll after a while, and you either gonna become totally despondent or you gonna become numb to the grief.
Right.
So I'm at the numb to the grief part now because I already went through when my mama went and my dad went a year later. I was totally despondent. I was still functional, but emotionally I was a wreck.
Wow. Yes, man. Well, only the strong survive this. You know that.
But it ain't for the faint of heart. The work that you do, side, the work that I do, the work Brother Rich do, Young Elder,
Mhm.
trying to get this positive, life changing information to our people.
Right.
And like a lot of the stuff that I see, other people that study the same materials didn't even see it. They
Right.
weren't even they it went right past them. But I don't know. I think that I had like a spiritual tutor that's a bad what they call a BMF. Shout out to
Mhm.
Big Meech, the chief to touchdown.
Hold up. Hold on. You saying Big Meats? He's free?
I got the report that he was released at 5 a.m. this morning.
How did they release him? I thought he had mad time.
Okay, so they gave him a time reduction first. That's supposed to have been 2025. But what you about to see, he ain't the only one about to be at home, and people mouth gonna be hanging on the ground because they're gonna be like, "Right, hey, said that stuff, but I thought he was crazy."
Wow,
A
man.
lot of the chiefs about to be coming home by before the end of the year because one, most of us don't know who the chiefs are because we lost track of our tribal traditions. A
Mm.
chief is responsible for a particular part of our community development. Big Meat's responsibility that he trained himself how to do is teach these youngsters how to live with wealth, right? And because that's the work he was doing, don't matter how he got the wealth, it matters that the good he served was more valuable to us than the means by which he was trained to learn how to handle wealth. The youngsters don't know how to handle wealth.
Right.
They get a little
Right.
bit of money, they want to kill each other, they want to, you
Right.
know,
Oh,
take their money down to the club and make it rain. That's not good financial sense.
all right.
So he was teaching them when you got money, just because you got money, you can't just talk down to people because you might be down tomorrow and they up.
Hmm.
A lot of
True.
people get a little money and they feel like that money made them better than you.
Right.
But that's something that's fleeting and temporary. Love is eternal.
All right. So let me let the audience know real quick. Y'all might hear some stuff tonight that make you say, I never heard that before. Because when we look at Ron and brothers like Bobby Hemmett and Phil Valentine, and y'all call that probably the dark side. What do you call it, Brother Ron? What you call it? The information and the knowledge that you deal with.
It's esoteric.
Esoteric. Okay. There
That's
you go.
or you can call it a cult. But people commonly misinterpret a cult for cult.
Uh-huh.
And cult has been given a negative connotation, never knowing that it's a root word.
Hmm.
It's the same root word to a cult as it is to culture, as it is to cultivate. At the root of all of those words is cult. And they
All right.
tell us that a cult is a wicked thing. Anything that we would be using to reconstitute the tribes has been villainized by the system. We
Okay,
still
so
gonna
let me get it
reconstitute.
off. Let me get you first with this first one. The first question I have for you is the number 13. What is the secret behind the number 13?
It's the 13th zodiacal seat. If you go to the Temple of Dendara in Kemet and you look, they have a stellar relief in the ceiling of the zodiac. And at the very center, there's the hippopotamus goddess with the alligator span. She's carrying a meat cleaver. That's Big Mama. Her name, Tawaret, right? Which is the
Hmm.
oldest known deity ever on Earth. The ancient Kemetic temple writings write that the first god was Tawaret, and she just so happened to be Big Mama, right? Big Mama is the embodiment of the universal creative force, right? She is what we call a chaos being emanating from triple darkness. And it was by leave of the great mother, Tawaret, that we have something called creation to express ourselves in individuality. The 13th zodiacal seat is the eye in the middle. It's the great mother who sits in the middle of the 12 signs of the zodiac. This is also the sacerdotal seat of earth. It's known as the Isis seat. And the Isis had 12 daughters that represents each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So her seat is always the 13th seat. In the usurpation of the divine feminine, they try to villainize and make her evil and tell her that, or tell us that God is a man with this long stringy beard wearing a white robe. That's Obatala. He gonna always ride with Big Mama. And don't care who you think you is, when you go tell Big Papa, he gonna say, what Big Mama tell you? Right? Obatala has been whitewashed in the history books under the Norse tradition because the people who receive the information is obligated to adapt the teachings to their culture. And when they adapt the teachings to their culture, in the Norsemen, they prominent male figures got a long stringy beard. I don't know if you can call him Odin, you can call him Zeus. It don't matter what you call him. He, the great father, is going to always stand in protection and guardianship of the great mother. That's the difference in the masculine aspect of the ruler gods and the creative aspect of the creator god, which is the feminine.
But does the number 13 also deals with evil? You
That's
see the movies come out Friday the 13th, stuff
hmm
like that. They say
that's the
this is a bad luck
villainization.
day,
Yeah,
and you know,
that's the
and people.
villainization of it.
And then I remember growing up, my moms was so damn superstitious. Oh, you be careful out there. The day is Friday the 13th, and all of that. So yeah, talk to us.
So the energy. First of
Hmm.
all, Friday is Freya Day. Freya, going back to Norse mythology and European divinity, is the daughter called Venus, called Oshun in the Vadun culture. Where you say I'm the only one in this community called an esoteric and arcane, the darkest house of consciousness. That might be why you call it dark. So the all of the dark stuff is given a negative connotation. All of the feminine stuff is given a negative connotation because they're trying to push an agenda. And now we to the point where their agenda don't work on us no more.
Hmm.
Right. And so when you see Bobby Hemmett, you see Dr. Valentine, you see the minister, right? You see Dr. Malachi. They are trying to tell us parts to the problem, and then the next generation, which is us, we come after them, Our job is to put the pieces together and tell the story so the people can understand it. There's nothing evil about the number 13. The only thing evil is the intent of the patriarchs who wanted to emasculate divinity, right? And usurp the divine feminine and replace it with a drag queen, Statue of Liberty, frame of reference. You think a Statue of Liberty is a man. I mean, a woman. The Statue of Liberty is Lucifer.
I've heard that before.
You can put, I already then posted the pictures. I would have brought the receipts, but we just chopping it up. But the Statue of Liberty is Lucifer. You could type it into TikTok and there's a couple of people doing the breakdown on it. The whole Luciferian agenda is a drag queen march across the land to conquer the matriarchal sacerdotal seats of power. By putting a man in the skirt does not change the quality of the seat. You can call him a mayor all you want. A mayor is always going to be a female, and a stallion going to always be a male. You do the math. They have us under the false pretense that the stallion is the female and the mayor is the male. That's why all of our town mothers used to be the mayors. When they met, it's called a Congress of Mayors. They still use the terms in reference to Mustangs out west when the females come together to prepare for the birthing season. Before the males come, they call it a Congress of Mayors, right? And then comes the stallions. When the stallions come, they fight. I want this flock, this Congress right here. Another use for the word Congress is sex, right? So they using our natural systems to rape us without our knowledge. They roofing us with false information. The town mother is the mayor, and the town mother is not selected by a vote. She's selected by birthright and recognition of the tribes in the town, right? And that's how we selected our mayors. The elections is the only control we have of politics is in local elections. That's election in the aldermen, city councilmen, depending on where you at. I forgot what they call them in the parishes, but they are all elected. Local government is the only actual true government on the land. Federal government is a fallacy. It's a fallacy, and it's based upon a corporate interim system occupying or pretending, masquerading de facto in law as the legitimate government agency, the dominant government agency, but they interim. That means they got a lifespan of how long they allowed to be here. You on mute?
Hold on, brother. What I want to get to right now is that I want to start talking about some other stuff because I've been hearing you talk about the aliens and stuff like that.
Which is one of my most. I hate talking about aliens and outer space, but I had to talk about it because
Yeah.
they here.
Well, there you go. And this is what I want to talk about. Um, what do aliens look like, and what is the evidence that you have that say aliens have visited Earth? And have you ever seen or experienced a UFO sighting?
Okay, now let's break the question into parts because that's three questions in one.
Yes, go into it.
So, what was the first part?
The first part was, what do aliens look like? And the second part is, do you have any evidence of aliens visiting Earth? Let's deal with them too.
Okay, aliens have varying different looks. The only proof is that it's a ship sitting right outside of Earth right now that the Pentagon is watching, that they've been reporting on since March. They said they're sending out lesser ships to do reconnaissance, and that there's nothing that they can do about it. That's the first piece of evidence. You can look it up, right? The As far as how they look, they have a varying different look depending on where they from. Because the code for the human is not the code for every sentient being. The only similarities most of us have that makes them anthropomorphize is the head, two arms, two legs, where you do got some that got 4 and 6 arms, and you do have some with 4 and 6 legs. But that's the exception to the rule. The general rule is for the sentient being, normally they come in with 2 arms and 2 legs and a head and a torso. So the general description in of an alien is anthropomorphized, but a lot of them look like me and you. Like we could be sitting here talking to one of them, and if he adapted to the language where he don't have an accent, you would never know he an alien. You would just think he's just another brother, right? They made a a movie about a brother from outer space. You remember that? The brother from outer space, because they wanted us to
Right, I
know
remember
that
that.
there is a sizable portion of them that's heavily melanated. Some of them melanin is so dark that it absorbed 10 times more light than the average person, and that's because of the deep space um, effect that it's having on them. And some of the suns set out so much radiation in the biological counter of most organisms to protect itself from massive amounts of radiation is to produce massive amounts of melanin as the response.
Have you yourself ever experienced the alien?
Um, yeah, but they normally talk to me telepathically and tell me they there. I only seen a couple of beings that I know were aliens, and they was telepathically talking to me. One caught me in Walmart, gave me a book reference when I first came home. And then there was another one that I encountered at a mall where I was walking down the mall, and he was telepathically telling me, almost to me, you almost to me. And when I looked up, he said, oh, you found me. Right. So they don't look, those ones didn't look different than regular people, but they was from different places. But I don't
Hmm.
tell people that stuff because I don't like to talk about space stuff because we have too many earth problems that we trying to escape from solving. We don't want to solve the problems where we at. We want to go somewhere else and take them problems with us and make that place as effed up as this place. But if we solve the problems where we at, we ain't got to worry about nobody from nowhere else.
Hmm.
That's how you spiritually protect it, by solving your problems. Because if you solving your problems, the energy field around you, Source is saying, don't mess with this one. He's doing his work. You always hear about that in the hood, putting in work, right?
Yeah.
Some of us work don't look pretty, but it's
Right.
necessary for the effect that it's going to cause. So when we do certain stuff, it may not fit within the parameters of accepted norms. And we might even end up locked up for following our purpose and our path. And sometimes we just end up isolating ourselves because it's difficult to explain to undeveloped spiritual minds a developed spiritual concept.
Hmm. What is your view on the government stance regarding UFO sightings?
The government is 100% aware of what it is and who they is. They communicate with them. Dr. Strange wrote a book about when Eisenhower was visited by the Venusians, right? And that's when, back in the 40s, and they after World War II, and they dropped the bomb because that's what caused us to be put in what's called a light lock, like it's a covenant. It's to lock us into the simulation spiritually, but that's also to keep us from spreading like disease beyond our realm, all of the dirt dealing that the people been taught to do. None of it is normal. Even if we accept it as normal, it's still not normal to us as a species. It's been given to us by outsiders. And that's one of the easiest ways to heal yourself is to find the foreign nature of the characteristic you exhibiting so you know that it's not who you are. That's how you kill your ego.
Is the
Purification of the
government
ego in the
telling us the
occult.
truth? Is the government being
Hell
honest with
no.
us?
The government is never going to tell us the whole truth. They give us half truths, but more than anything, they talk in what's called double speak, coded talk. Like Donald J. Trump know exactly what an AK-47 is. Went on the news and he said I became a gun expert when they told me about the MK-47. That's a code. It's not a misspeak, double speak, right? And the code crackers are other heads of state has a code cracker. I'm the code cracker for Empress Rearbird, right?
Hmm.
She is the blood right descendant matriarch to call for to sit on the sacerdotal seat. And so when she went to Philadelphia, sat on the sacerdotal seat, she took back the tribal right to political and social systems. So now what we about to see is the shift. But we first had to get to the part where because I have to give her reporting. That's going to be live because I have to do it where all of the tribes across the land have equal access to the information. Whether they believe it or don't believe it is they're inconsequential to the fact that they had access to it by public notice. So the report that I got to give her is on the state of the war and with receipts.
Let me ask you this: these aliens that you have seen, that you have come in contact with, do they have any special powers? Should we be afraid of these aliens? What? Talk to me.
Look, you ever hear the story about the angels and then they fall on their face in fear in the presence of the angel? You don't
Mm-hmm.
gotta fear them unless you dirty,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless you doing secret shit to hurt people behind the eyes of the unwitting public. You concealing your dirt and you doing nefarious things, knowing exactly what you're doing. The frequency is what's gonna tell you that you the one. Because when you're doing certain stuff, it shows in your frequency. They call it biorhythms. If you look up biorhythms, then what you do alters your biorhythm. If your natural biorhythm is to be in the heart chakra space, pure love energy, but you operating from the root chakra, you've been inverted. Once you've inverted, it alters your frequency. You don't look the same energetically. Like if you take Kirlian photography, you won't have what's called a pure color. It will be specks of darkness in your color. They can see it with their eyes because they see a larger light spectrum than our 0.1%. They seeing like 40% light spectrum. So they seeing you so deep you can't hide your secrets. And they telepathic. So now they listening to you lying to yourself, trying to convince yourself you a good person while you running around doing all this dirt. And now you trying to convince publicly everybody that you a good person. Instead of stop doing the dirt and be yourself, it'll come out whether you a good person or not. Right? And then they gotta always send in somebody to undermine you.
Mm-hmm. What technological advancements do you believe were inspired by aliens encounter? By aliens encounter.
Fiber optics was developed off the reverse engineering in Area 51 in the Roswell crash. This is already recorded and exposed, and it's already available under the Freedom of Information Act to be reviewed. Um, the cell phone is ancient. Most of the technology is ancient anyway. Atlanteans had all of the stuff that we consider modern technology, plus some you haven't seen yet. They were the pyramid builders of the Great Pyramid.
The aliens?
No, Atlanteans.
Oh, oh, okay. Wow, okay.
The Atlanteans also were space travelers. Well, we call them skywalkers. We didn't call them space travelers. The ancient term translates into modern English as skywalkers. So we call them skywalkers. That means that they travel through beyond the realm of the earth. They got blocked out. They couldn't get back in because had to fight this spiritual warfare. Now the barrier is being removed, and the skies are going to look entirely different. That's why they soft selling you all these extra moons and stuff, and then you seeing the soft sell drip in social media. People posting two suns in the sky, two moons in the sky. Right? It was a time when that moon wasn't there, and that moon is subject to take off and leave if shit get thick somewhere and they need it. It's a battleship.
If the aliens encounter us during the pyramid age and then continue, then why aren't we developed?
We crashed civilization. Civilization was crashed on purpose. The last war,
When you say we crashed civilization, what do you mean?
I'm about to tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay. If you go to the sutras, the Vimana sutras, and it tell you about the Vimanas wars. Well, the last war was a nuclear holocaust. Created the last ice age. It was at that point that civilization was wiped out because the disaster of war. That's called a crashed civilization. It grew to the point where it imploded because somebody couldn't get right. They couldn't bump straight. So the war break out. The war is known also in the Sumer as the Anunnaki Wars. The war against the sibling rivalry of Enki and Enlil. This matriculates into your biblical information, where they telling you about the fight that Enlil is having with Enki. They're calling Enki Satan in the Bible. They calling Enlil Yahweh in the Bible, and they calling Inanna Lucifer in the Bible. Right? The bright and morning star references the star called Venus. On the heels of Venus is the seventh sun, which is called Mercury, but not sun S-U-N, seventh sun S-O-N, but it's in reference to Venus birthing a son off the sun, right? Because between Venus and the sun is Mercury on the horizon. Mercury is always on the heels of Venus, and this is the baby that holds his mother's skirt as she follows her around. And then comes the Great Father, represented by the solar orb as Anu, Ani, Ra, the exalted one, Elion, Elion, El, right? Who shines his light to be a light among men, which is his light of the knowledge, the divine spark. And the one who receives the divine spark is the heir to the throne, or we would call him in Kemetic terms, he's Heru, the son that's aspiring to reclaim his father's throne, Osiris, the great Osirian, Orion star constellation, represented in the zodiac, I mean in the Bible, as heaven, right? Because the Greek word for heaven is Orionos. And Orionos is in reference to the star constellation Orion, right? So the son, who's mama's boy, because he's always following mama around, but he is the perfect reflection of the father, because even though he's following mama around, Papa's light shine greatly up on this son. S-O-N. So now the son learns how to become a man by examining the masculine qualities of the father. And the training from the mother teaches him how to tend to the needs of his future wife that she's going to pick. The fool's journey, tarot deck, becomes the hero's journey up on the self-discovery, because he thought he was a fool and everybody else did too. But he went about his journey down the yellow brick road in search of the Wizard of Oz. The wizard is the wise one, Merlin the magician. Oz is the strong one, because Oz means strength. The strong one in the Bible is known as Chemosh. Chemosh is the god of the Moabites. The Moabites are kindred to both the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, right? Because who was Moab? Moab was Lot's son,
Mm.
and Lot was Abraham's nephew, right? So they telling you your historical data, and they scramble it up. So subconsciously, you don't know it's scrambled up. Consciously, you following the narrative they gave you, but subconsciously is accepted, because the subconscious mind don't know the conscious mind don't understand what it's studying. But you studying Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth mean basic instructions before leveling up. Because once you level up, the Bible becomes obsolete when you realize it's a star map and a blueprint for the son to rise and become the redeemer of the Father. So John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. But what do you mean he gave his only begotten son? Because he didn't give him up to be crucified on a literal cross. But because you take the story literally, you never understand the deeper meaning, but your soul know that the story was telling you the holy drama straight out of the walls of Kemet, and that the Jesus is two people in the Bible. They telling you the story of the mother, Isis, as Jesus, and her son, Emmanuel, as God with us. And they mix them up because you're not going to know the difference when they put both of their words in red, because you don't know forensic profiling to separate two different people talking by character.
What if I was to say to you, Brother Rod, that Jesus is God? God rebirthed itself coming through the womb of woman to be physical being on the planet. Because before that, he's spirit. You can't see the spirit. But in order to be seen, he reborn himself coming through the flesh. What if I was to say that? What would you say, man?
Nothing.
Not. Would
No,
you?
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
even respond
is
to
it
that.
crazy? What is it
No,
crazy?
it just
Oh,
tells
okay.
me what it tells. All you telling me is your perception of how you perceive this ancient holy drama.
Right,
But
right.
because you don't know the original, you just took a cheap copy.
Oh, okay, okay. So I want to
So I wouldn't
let
answer it.
me let me get into this right quick. How do you differentiate between real magic and mirror illusion. So now we're gonna get into sorcery, and let's talk about some magic here.
The magic sciences do different things. The most potent and powerful of the magics was called blood magic, right? It's the what they call dashing the blood upon the altar, right? Talks about it in the Bible. The blood sacrifice, it every time you kill something, it has an effect somewhere in the living. And if you use the blood to seal the contract, you're talking about life force energy is sealing the contract. The contract's duration fades over time. So the blood and the blood magic ritual tells you that in the beginning, at its height of potency, the magic is very strong. As it wanes, it becomes faded as ink, and its potency also is fading to match the duration of the contract. Because you have to have an exit strategy to all contracts. And the contracts that they making is between the blood that's being spilled being sold to the loose beings. The loose beings can take physical form or they don't have to. They can use another agency of influence in the physical world to bring about the effect that your blood sacrifice requires. Then you have the second most powerful magic is sex magic, because spirit energy and sex energy are twins. They Gemini twins, though. The spirit energy is descending, is feminine from source. The sex energy is coming from the root chakra, right? It's red, it's pure lust. It's rising up. And as the two rise, they balance each other out into what's a pink energy. The pink energy becomes the manner of life, right? And the energy is represented by a balancing of spiritual self and sexual self. And the disciplinary training tool is called fasting, because you raising your energy and you are using your output energy internally in order to allow your spiritual energy to expand from the inside out, as opposed to only being coming from the outside. So you becoming one with your higher self through the process of sex or abstinence from sex. You can use both. A man and a woman who are in agreement and in balance with each other can manifest their best life together as heaven on earth, but there's going to be required a physical action behind the effort to bring it into being. And this is why they say faith without works is dead. You have to do your due diligence to meet the energy requirements to activate the unified energy and to bring about in the 3D realm. The desire becomes the realization upon the agreement of the gender, right? And because he can feel it, he describe it because he can see it. Left brain, right brain. As he describe it, she feel it, they project it out into the world. But remember, the mirror effect applies. I mean, it's going to be the same but different when you see it. It might not be exactly how it looked when you visualized it, but there will be key components that'll make it unmistakable that this is what you manifested. It don't always look like you want it to look. or expected
Okay.
to.
Before I go on, I was trying to figure out how to word this because I just seen it in the chat where they talked about menstrual blood is the
Hmm.
first beginning of magic. So I want to say I was trying to figure out how to word the sentence to you, and I was going to say if women knew the power within their menstrual cycle, their blood, would they be better off today if they knew the power within the menstrual blood?
Well, you got to remember, in order to usurp the divine feminine, you have to, anybody that has passes on the knowledge, what's called Yoni magic,
Hmm.
right? You have Oshun priestesses in the Voodoo tradition that teach Yoni magic. In the European tradition, you have the priestess of Bridget or the priestess of Diana, who teaches the Yoni magic from the cultural standpoint. Then in India, you have, I can't even pronounce her name, Bhakta Shiva, she the wife of Shiva, who is the embodiment of beauty, who teaches the women about the Yoni magic. In Kali Ma, the keeper of time, the dark mother, who keeps over the sacred dark places of the womb. And she purges it in time. And you can calculate it, and it's called the 28-day cycle, right? And the 28-day cycle is showing you the same cycles that we go through on Earth. They also go through in menstruation, but it's just played out on a microcosm to the macrocosm.
Hmm.
So
Yo,
they
you.
deny the women the ritualistic knowledge to access the uterus power in the womb. This is what caused the Salem witch hunts. A lot of us don't know the Salem witch hunts was because one of our big mamas was teaching the orphan females from Europe how to harness their yoni magic. And when the um, political figures discovered this, they feared that they would join forces and use yoni magic to conquer the enemy. So they wanted to kill him before they all got the full knowledge. One of the most notorious stories from the Salem witch hunts is the women who was in the dancing frenzy. The dancing frenzy is fully activated mitochondrial DNA. When it's fully activated, the women become contagious one to another, and the dance is replicated in the dervish schools as the whirling dervish. And the women who wore the white gowns by the riverside, who harnessed the yoni magic, who activated the mitochondria, who danced in the circle, reflected the sunlight, and it left light beams flying back to the sun in order to respond to what Earth is telling the sun in the 3D realm. So the women were harnessing this magic in order to have what's called the construct of heaven. And this is why you always hear them talking about the veil. The bride wears the veil, not the groom. And when the veil is lifted, the great mother is seen, as in the shrine of the Black Madonna. Madonna means young maiden. Black means she worked for Big Mama, right? She is the youthful representation of what Big Mama is. Big Mama is the older version. She's not Madonna no more. Now she's the Dark Mother, or what
Now,
they call her, um, the Isis and Child. They got another name for it, but just the mother and child. So the mother raised the son in order to redeem the father. This all in the magic. They have
hmm
to villainize the women because if the women become conscious of the knowledge, and the Sufis is practicing the rituals to raise the mitochondrial frequency. Every mystic Sufi had a daughter that he taught in secret the sacred ritual to raise the mitochondrial frequency in order to purge wickedness from the earth. And so now those daughters, they called the daughters of the Sufi in the occult world. In the secret, they fall under the ancient Arab order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, or the keepers of the great shrine of the great mother. The great shrine represented in the takeover by the Vatican, named after Vaticus, the sister named Vaticus, who they built the the temple on top of her graveyard or grave site, depending on how you want to call it.
Okay. How does popular cultures affect the perception of sorcery? I wanna get stay on that sorcery thing for a minute.
Okay. So look, in the society we live in, they call it a Judeo-Christian society.
Hmm.
What that means is they are going to use the Judeo-Christian philosophical standards of influence in order for the people to respond in a particular way. And this is what's going to be the driving force for the development of a society. As long as you control the creator gods and the ruler gods and how they react to creation, you can steer how creation manifests through the great egregore, which is the universal mind. It's like you hijacking it with the help of all of the other guys that don't know they're helping you, because you put circumstances in a path and you corral them like the farmer do the cows in order to get it from one part of the farm to the other, right? So they use what's called influence by having certain people speak on magic in a negative manner, right? And a lot of the types of magic are so vilified, and that's how they use the barrier of fear, which generates the common people's perception of what magic is and how it works, and that the devil is behind it. But you don't know that you the devil's agent because you're using his magic on yourself. That's called the Amen spell. That's why all of the religions say Amen after they prayer, except the Buddhists.
Have you witnessed real sorcery?
Yeah, I know how to do it, but I don't do it.
Well, they say that sorcery is evil.
No, well, it can be used for evil.
Hmm.
It's like what Darth Vader told Luke Skywalker about the Force. He said, no, what I mean, Obi-Wan. He said, Luke, the Force is neither good nor bad. It is the intention of the Jedi who wields the Force that determines whether it's good or bad. You can use the magic for constructive or destructive purposes, or you can just use them to sustain something, right? The Force doesn't care about 3D reality. Only 3D beings care about 3D reality. The Force encompasses and permeates 3D, but it's not controlled by 3D. But you, as one of the gods, have sufficient enough control to contribute to the change. And that's why you have this mantra, be the change you want to see, right? People just think it sounds cute, but it's a scientific underpinning to that. You have to get the attention of the other powerful minds who may be distracted by finding the common thread because they all link up. And the
Okay.
universal mind is like a spider web.
All right. Once again, family, we're speaking with our brother Rod Hayes. Rod Hayes is going in and breaking down this science, man. I love it. Straight from the head, too. Notice, I want y'all to notice that straight from the head. No notes. No notes. He got it all right here. So
Stay ready, don't get ready, sir.
that's right. That's right. Can sorcery be explained through psychological phenomena?
Yes. So Carl Jung was a psychologist. They call him the occult psychologist because understanding the archetypes is what allows you to be able to read those occult and sorceress type energies. When you learn how to read archetypes, then naturally, if you study in psychology, you're gonna run into Carl Jung, you're gonna run into Sigmund Freud. Freud is the father of psychiatry. And if you tracing back in the United States, you're gonna run into Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was the psychoanalyst who created the methodology of oppression. They call it the Willie Lynch syndrome. But he was a early sociologist and psychologist who was writing about it. When you get to France, you run into Gustave Le Bon, who was studying sociology and wrote the book The Crowd. In this book, it tells you how to control the masses by controlling who the antagonist is and who the protagonist is, and how to pit them against each other to optimize the effect. Right? Now, when you studying that and you understanding that the sorcery is in the movement of the people, it's in the manipulation of the most amount of people by controlling the narrative of the information they receive. Right? So the count, once you know how the sorcery work, your spiritual self builds you a natural defense system. But because we don't never study the magic, because we think it's evil, we never develop the proper defenses, what they call in the religious world, Christian world, putting on the full armor of God. You have to learn key aspects of the magic and how it worked to protect yourself. And blood magic is why we were not able to break our oppression to the foreign agents that came over here, because they use a blood magic ritual in the blood of Crispus Attucks, the first to die, because you need what's called first blood. So that's why they make it prominent in the history books that you know who the first person to die in the American Revolution, right? Because by knowing that it's Crispus Attucks, now you know something else. You know whose blood they wrote the secondary constitution in, the one that's sitting in the George Washington Masonic Memorial. Now you know who blood it is, and now you know that they did it because they books say the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain. So when they put you under the spell and they made you believe that the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain, and they constantly telling you that a righteous chief, he was in the position of right from the land on the land, and he was operating in his proper capacity as a leader on the land, and they execute him. So now they have to write the contract in his blood, a blood oath. We gonna honor it spiritually, and because we honoring it spiritually, it's gonna play out negatively socially. So then that's magic influencing politics, that's influencing the minds of the most people. Because you got to realize the most powerful or the most influential tools for teaching people in North America is religion and politics, right? And entertainment. Entertainment is more apt to reach them than religion and politics in this era. But it was an era where only the religious stuff was influential. And the religious stuff was brought specifically to enslave you mentally and spiritually. And the only way to enslave you mentally and spiritually is to first convince you to put yourself spiritually under a spell that'll keep you from protesting mentally. This was done in the 18th dynasty in the war between the Amin priests and the Aten priests. It's known legendary as the Priest Wars. The Amin spell makes the god being subjugate itself by saying Amen. He's confirming that he will not outshine any of the people around him. But they don't know that. They think that it means so be it. But they don't study Egyptology and hieroglyphics, so they'll never know what it means. So when you tell them what it means, because a preacher didn't tell them it mean that, they gonna think you lying and you making it up. Never knowing that the preacher is just as deceived, if not so more so, if he actually believe that BS he be teaching, than the people he's talking to. And if he's deceived, that's called the blind leading the blind. Now, it was a time where the ones who know concealed it in the church, the AME. This is why all of the brothers from the lodges was AME Christians, because they was finding out what's going on and they was passing the messages through the church. But when Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, became the prominent battle cry in the nonviolent philosophy of Mohandas K. Gandhi, right, became the battle call, they abandoned the secret traditions. Only a handful of them still know the purpose of the AME church was to pass tribal information in the presence of the enemy, using what the enemy gave us to control us as a way to be defiant to the enemy's control. So they became seduced, never knowing that after Elijah Muhammad had that historical meeting with Elijah Muhammad, that he discovered that he had integrated into a burning house. Right? When he tried to tell them, nobody didn't listen, because all they still remember is I had a dream. They don't remember that long before Columbus came, we were here. They don't hear that part. They don't hear him saying that Europe came over and they undergirded their white peasantry with an infrastructure. Financially speaking, this is. They had what they call farm college grants, right? They don't hear that Martin Luther King. They only still hear have a dream, which was the least of his greatest accomplishments or speeches. But we don't want to talk about that because we want to follow the victim mentality, because we've been putting ourselves in this spell so long. It's embarrassing to find out that you
figure out where everything is because I'm in like dark mode. I can't. I have to, it doesn't look the same. So y'all, if I be up here messing up, it's because I have changed the. Uh, I've used a new background that StreamYard has and a new setup, and so I got to get used to it. But greetings, greetings, greetings. I'm so glad. I'm glad that that you are here. I'm glad that you, and even you are here too. So without any further delay, let's get to it. Let's get to it. let's talk. Let's talk about what's going on and what has taken place even in the last 7 days that we all need to be aware
hold on 1 second, Doctor. I have an issue with you.
of. Okay. Oops.
I had another app just start playing on its own.
Oh, okay. There you are. There you are. There you
Yeah, so it has been a lot going on. Um, I was telling people that Kamala job was to fail miserably as the fall of the whore of Babylon, right?
okay.
the the purple and the pearls for the inauguration was the signal and showed you where you was at in the book of Revelations.
Now, what inauguration are we talking about? The one that was Biden's inauguration, or what?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, now when she came in, we forgot that Trump was standing in front of the church with the upside down Bible. And we
okay,
forgot about Nancy Pelosi tearing up the minutes in the Senate in front of the camera,
I remember that. I remember that.
right? Those are two different contracts being closed out on the same day.
Okay.
One is the biblical contract for the blood oaths, and the other one was the fraudulent contracts for the corporation to govern the people. Now,
And
what led to that was the January 6th thing.
mm-hmm,
Remember when the dude took the land flag, the one with no fringes, he sat at Pelosi's desk, right? And he was behind the Admiralty flag. That was the transfer of jurisdiction. So when you go back and listen to who sent him, you find out he was working with a shaman from the land, but he was also working with military top brass, right? We forget about that. Okay, so that was reclaiming the republic from the Democratic corporation, right? Democracy is told to us in a fictitious form.
mm-hmm,
When you read all communist documents about the adding of communism into a governmental system, they all refer to it as democracy,
mm,
right? So remember, Noble Drew Ali said the elephant is our friend, right? He also said, I left a watchdog for the people, and the watchdog is the elephant. And then the Hopi prophecy talked about the man in the red hat, right? That's recorded from back in 74, before Trump was even considered for the presidential campaigns, right? So the MAGA hat, the red hat, went from a white hat to a red hat to a black and gold hat. Colors is flipping the different organizational redemptions that's being made through the MAGA process. So you got tribal operations going on in the midst of standard government operating procedures.
mm-hmm.
So you watching the tribes do something, allowing the government to artificially run, and the tribes is piggybacking on that artificial narrative in order to get clues across the land in everybody's face behind their back. Only the ones who know gonna know what the codes are,
Okay.
right? So the Schumann resident go crazy when on election day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's a massive response from a solar flare.
Now, is the solar flare, people are talking about, some people talk about the solar flare as it would be something to be feared or to stay away from. And then I hear others saying, it's a good thing and it's only going to, if it has a negative effect, it's only on those that shouldn't be here
It's
on the
gonna turn
planet.
some people's clocks off. Their time is up.
You mean they tick us, like,
Yeah.
right.
They life script has ran its course when that voltage go through. That's what they call the great solar flash. They're looking for it to happen any day now. Then when
So we
that
have that
happened,
effect.
right. So when that happened, it's supposed to have a massive effect on the Schumann resonance because the Earth and the Sun is communicating. In order for Earth to get rid of the parasites, the UV rays have to be calibrated to the frequency required to get rid of the parasites.
And the
Earth read
parasites
the
are.
human parasites by mitochondria. resonance. The mitochondrial is the powerhouse of the cell, and from the source of the power comes the source of the remedy. So it has to be able to communicate what the DNA say back to the source,
Okay.
right? So then the the mitochondrial is represented in the soil of the earth. This how you could tell a better DNA match would be the DNA to the soil for us than it would DNA to a tribe.
Okay.
The people from the land have a DNA sequence that's characteristic of the soil of the land. They already know this, though. This is common scientific information that they just don't talk about. It's like they don't push it to the forefront because they don't want you to know they can test the land to see if you from it, matching it to your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Have
That's
they
what they
been doing
used to.
any of that? Have they been doing any of that anyway? All along when they've taken a little sample of blood from the babies and
They always, anytime they taking blood, they experimenting on it and investigating the developments in the genome. That's why they
so
take so much to run the tests that require a drop.
and then all of these centers around that are paying drug addicts and everybody else to get their to donate blood. The purpose is probably more nefarious than we think.
Yeah, well, the vampires got to use the blood banks in order to stay stocked up with enough human blood to survive.
Never thought of it that way.
That's why they call them blood banks.
Because you can make a deposit, you can make a withdrawal.
Right. And the ones can go to the cash bank and then deliver to the blood bank and exchange a currency for the value in blood.
Really?
Yeah, why you think they pay you for blood? Then they also can use the cover story of emergency hospital usage to
Yeah.
justify the massive amounts of blood that they collect. It ain't that many people getting transfusions on the planet. So they taking plasma, separating cells. They running the red blood cells through hemoglobin testing to determine the processing ratio of iron to oxygen in the blood that's causing the rust factor. Because eventually the iron is going to be replaced back with the magnesium, and it's going to switch the blood ratio in the hemoglobin. It's going to look more like chlorophyll, and it's going to change and alter the color of the skin. That's all part of the ancient record. That's why they paint all those deities as green, right? Because when the solar flare go, it changes the chemistry of the genome. This is why we're not 12 strand no more. It's been upgraded to now the same amount of information that required 12 strands only require 2. But you don't have to be 150 feet tall no more either. When you
Let's
had
go back
12,
to that. Let's go back to that for a minute. Just let's park there just for a minute about so when they start to speculate who built what and whether or not there was ET help assistance or whether or not there were giants that actually facilitated a lot was done. This when you say that are you talking about our people and we've come down just like computers have come down from room size to you can hold it in your hand.
right, that's called upgrades. That's called
Okay.
upgrades.
All
Now,
right.
what in the Darwinian evolutionary theory, they got what's called missing links.
Okay.
This is because of laboratory intervention in the genome. When you realize
So
that we've been doing genetic engineering since the beginning of humanity, and we was creating avatars to operate in this system of 3D operational matrix.
I
Somebody got smart and figured out that if they gave us amnesia in the matrix, that they can recycle the matrix over and over and nobody will ever jump through the infinity loop.
Do you feel that when people have these so-called near-death experiences,